Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Going Mobile with Google AdWords. I'm your host, John Lisbon, today, and with me is Corey Banks. Good morning, Corey. How you doing?
Good morning, John. I'm doing well. Thanks for having us here.
And it's great to have all of you out here today. What we're going to be talking about today is we're going to be drilling in on Google mobile AdWords. And the mobile advertising landscape is a huge one, but today we're just going to be drilling in on this one area that we think deserves special attention because it's an area that you can start advertising today. And plus, we only have 30, 45 minutes, so we felt it was better to kind of drill down and give you an idea of what you can do right now with Google as opposed to go over the whole landscape, which we'll probably do in a future webinar. First, I'm going to talk a little bit about PointIt. We were launched in April of 2002. We're Seattle's largest independent search marketing firm, offering paid search, SEO, and now mobile advertising. 15-member team with 40 years of experience and servicing clients among various verticals and revenue models. So today, in today's webinar, we're going to go over those mind-blowing mobile stats that you've heard, you've enjoyed, you've listened to, and we're going to deliver some more right now. Also, how it differs from the regular search network on Google or Google AdWords, and how it's very much the same. How you can engage your audience with Google Mobile, so get your rings out and get ready to spend a lot of money, and some mobile content options as well in the mobile content network, as there is also not just a search network, but a content network. And we'll follow up or finish off with some Q&A. Corey.
Thanks, John, and thanks for being here, everybody. Let's start at the very basics. We've all heard the phrase mobile marketing. It's a big buzzword nowadays, but what does mobile marketing really entail? If we look at a dictionary, it's going to tell us the use of wireless media as an integrated content and direct responsive vehicle within a cross-media or standalone marketing communications program. And that's really just a fancy way of saying that our existing marketing programs can be applied to people who are accessing the mobile internet through wireless devices, cell phones, tablets, PDAs. Really, anytime people are on the go and connecting to the internet, we can take our existing online marketing and put it in front of them. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. And in defining what mobile marketing is, it's probably important to start talking about the mobile landscape and really understand why it's important, why it is such a buzzword.
Thanks, Corey. It is kind of interesting you mentioned the iPad as, that's the newest technology out there, and some people don't think of it as a mobile, part of the mobile advertising landscape. But it's just amazing that they've sold actually more in the first month than iPods, than they sold in iPods in the first month. So it's really taken off, and it's definitely going to be a big part of that landscape.
Yeah, absolutely. We actually have a little bit of discussion coming up here in a few moments about the iPad and about what really the mobile landscape is, what kinds of devices we're talking about. It's not just smartphones. But let's take a step back and look at the growth that we're seeing in this mobile landscape. Think of mobile marketing in today's terms like the PC was in 1996. Think of how quickly the PC ramped up as far as usage, ownership. The moment that the internet became a commodity, something that people could easily get their hands on and start using, and it got integrated into everyday life, we saw PC sales grow 3 times the amount that they had before, and that arc was a very sharp. It was a sharp growth. We see that in mobile marketing as well. Mobile devices are everywhere, and we actually see mobile devices outpacing the growth of what the PC did back in the 90s. Morgan Stanley put out a report late last year, which we're going to actually look a little bit at later in a few more slides, but they talked about the growth of these mobile devices in this mobile landscape. They said, we believe more users will likely connect to the internet via mobile devices than desktop PCs within 5 years. Think about that for a moment. We're all connected to our computers on a day-to-day basis. We're sitting in front of them right now. We're chained to our desks. But in 5 years, according to Morgan Stanley, that information that we have chained to our desktop is going to be going with us wherever we go. And we see a lot of that already anecdotally now. But that landscape is important because if everybody is taking their information with them, we want to make sure that part of the information they're taking with them is our marketing message, so we can get across to them and get them what they're looking for.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, that's the one. This is the one device. I mean, you don't want to go. You don't want to take with you when you leave home, and that and your keys. So
Absolutely.
it's a part of us right now, and yeah, it's just going to free us all up, right?
Absolutely.
Just like the internet was.
That's right. So in thinking about how people are using these devices, let's take a look at some of these mind-blowing stats. Mobile search patterns really go along the lines of what we see on desktop computers today, and that's hard to think about when you think of the way these devices used to be. You know, can you imagine pulling out a Motorola Razr and using it like you would your computer? You'd be surprised how many people do. According to Trend Micro, the kind of usage that we see on these mobile devices is very much like how we expect people to use the internet on their desktop devices. 69% of users go immediately to search engine sites like Google and Yahoo. And we expect this, right? And we're constantly searching for information, and this is one of the big draws for search marketing and online marketing. We see a lot of people who are also using news and sports websites. A heavy amount of news websites get sent to iPhones and Android devices every single day. Social networking and community websites are very large for the mobile marketing the mobile device landscape. And it makes sense because we want to share the things that we're doing when we're on the go. Sites like Facebook and Twitter have become Twitter especially has become just really, really popular in the mobile space because of its ease of use, no matter what kind of platform you're using it on. The trend keeps going with desktop computers as we go down this chart. Banking and investing websites, corporate sites, shopping, audio and video sharing sites are becoming more and more popular as these devices become more and more powerful.
Yeah, this next chart, Corey, actually is another eMarketer chart. And it's really interesting because it shows it's really interesting to us as marketers because it shows the growth and how much money is going to be spent on mobile. As I said, it's going to, it's going to be ramping up into a formidable online marketing presence, and 3.3 billion in 2013, according to this study.
And that's just a forecast. I mean, it wouldn't honestly surprise me or you, John, to think that might go up even more. I mean, everybody is starting to see the importance of the mobile landscape for their advertising platforms, and so the money is being spent. The reason people are jumping into it so heavily is because this audience is vast, and it's growing. Like we said earlier, it's outpacing desktop usage comparatively to the 90s, and even more so now. I mean, we're seeing more people spend more time on their cell phones than we see people spending on their computers. Think about it. It makes sense. 68 million people in the United States use their mobile browser every month. Doesn't matter what kind of phone that they're using. They are actually connecting to the internet and using a browser on their mobile device. 78% of the U.S. population owns a mobile device. And this is actually a stat that tends to be higher when we start thinking about an international audience. A lot of developing nations are spending more time on these mobile devices than they would be on traditional computing devices. This is a large audience, and it's only going to get bigger as we move forward. So now is really the time to figure out how to translate your marketing message to this platform.
It's truly mind-blowing.
It is. Here's that chart that I was talking about earlier from Mary Meeker's report at Morgan Stanley. This is in late 2009. I think it's in December. And this is showing kind of the growth of each successive computing cycle. Mary Meeker's thesis is that the mobile internet, the devices that can connect to a wireless networking platform, that's the new big cycle in computing, and this is going to dwarf anything that's come before it. Mainframes, mini computers, the PC, which had previously been considered a giant leap forward. All the different kinds of devices that can connect to the mobile internet are going to dwarf that. And we're not just talking about smartphones. We're also talking about tablet devices like the iPad, any kind of mobile mobile computing device that's going to use a touchscreen interface. The Amazon Kindle, you wouldn't traditionally think of that as a vehicle for mobile advertising, but there is an experimental browser there. And Amazon, of course, does its own kind of advertising on the Kindle, so that's a device to keep an eye on. MP3 players that not only play music anymore, but connect and can pull down information from a wireless hotspot. Cell phones, obviously, PDAs, car electronics. The scope of these devices goes outside of what we traditionally think of as just a phone. It's really anything that can connect to a wireless hotspot, to a cell phone network, and pull down the kind of information that we're used to from a desktop internet experience. So we've made a pretty strong case here for the mobile internet and why it's a viable audience and why you should definitely go after it. Let's talk a little bit about how we can advertise to these people. You would think that if people are using their mobile devices to connect to the internet, they'd be doing it in a kind of a different scenario than what we're used to on the desktop. And we've already talked a little bit about how they're not. But there are some definite challenges compared to the desktop PC. There are really two types of phones that we're dealing with when we're talking about advertising on mobile platforms, a WAP phone and a high-end device. WAP, which stands for Wireless Application Protocol, is what we traditionally call a feature phone or a dumb phone. These are standard devices that have very limited internet capabilities. They can maybe check email, they can view special WAP formatted websites, which obviously are going to be very constrained as far as dimensions of a landing page go. They have a little bit of application support, but nothing as robust as what we see with Apple's App Store or Google's Android app platform. But the big thing to remember here is that there are thousands of different models of these cell phones. They're all over the place. Not everybody has adopted a high-end device like an iPhone, and they're still a viable advertising platform. You really just have to change the way that you're going to advertise to them. We're not going to focus a ton on WAP devices today, largely because we believe that the future are these high-end devices.
Right, and that doesn't discount the fact that right now there are still maybe 70-80% of the phones out there are WAP devices, and many of the consumers out there are using WAP phones. But so Corey, you still feel that smartphones are the way to go?
I do. Let's take a moment and look at these high-end devices, and then I'll show you why I believe that smartphones and iPhones and Androids are really where your focus should be. High-end devices, this makes sense, right? iPhones, Android phones, even the Palm Pre, now that HP has put in their bid to buy Palm, I really see Palm being a little bit more of a player in this space. These are more than phones. These really are computing devices. They can download a robust series of applications. They have full web browser experiences. You're not limited in just looking at specially formatted pages. They really do more than make phone calls, and I think anecdotally, we probably look at our phones and can use them in completely different ways, and I hardly ever make a call on my phone. I spend more time accessing the internet and sending Twitter messages and sending out emails more so than texts and phone calls, which is really telling as far as usage goes.
Right, and my kid uses it more than me, but I don't want anybody advertising to him.
That's true. So let's talk about the differences here. Why does Point 8 focus on these high-end devices? Some of it's kind of simple. When you're using Google Adwords, which we're going to talk about in a few moments, to advertise to people on mobile devices, you're facing stricter constraints, especially with your ad text. On a WAP device, you're really only allowed an 18-character headline compared to the standard 25-character headline, and that may seem like it's not a giant difference, but when you're taking your existing AdWords campaign and adapting it for a mobile device, it makes sense to be able to translate exactly what your ad copy is to a high-end device instead of having to make some crucial cuts for a WAP phone. You're also dealing with different kinds of landing pages, as we've talked about. You can go back to the previous slide. You can't render HTML pages very easily on a feature phone. You have to use WAP formatted landing pages, and those can be tricky to develop, especially if you have limited IT resources. On a high-end device, you can show both kinds of of landing pages. And in a lot of scenarios, depending on the way that your website is set up, your existing landing page might get some pretty decent results already on a high-end device. It's something worth looking into. Everything else pretty much works the same. And that's a key point for mobile marketing, is especially through Google AdWords, is that a lot of what we've learned on the AdWords platform for desktop advertising can work just the same on a high-end device, maybe just a few tweaks here and there. Plus, there are new opportunities for mobile advertising through Google AdWords, which we'll talk about here in a few moments, that really make it an attractive model.
Yeah, and I think that's important to point out that many of you who may think you're not even advertising on mobile might be doing it now, because if you're advertising on Google, you're typically already opted into the Google mobile network for smart-end devices, for high-end devices.
Absolutely. It's not uncommon. Well, Google, it's an opt-out policy for Google. By default, when you start a search campaign, you are going to be on mobile devices, and you'll have to go in and turn that off. But this is an opportunity more than a problem. Take a look in your AdWords campaign, hopefully after the webinar, and take a look at some of the data. It might surprise you to see how well you're performing on these mobile platforms.
Yeah.
Let's take a moment and talk about the usage on these phones. What we have here are two slides showing comparing usage on a WAP phone versus desktop and an iPhone versus desktop. And if we look at these feature phones, you're really only catching a couple of different areas of interest. We see a lot of search and browsing activity on local sites, local search queries, and the same thing for entertainment. A lot of people want to read their gossip blogs or are searching for the latest news about is Britney Spears still a thing? I'm not even sure. But it's a limited amount of focus on a WAP phone, and that's largely because of the technology constraints for these feature phones. If we look at the iPhone, we're getting a much broader range of usage and interest, comparable to a desktop. Not only are we seeing a large amount of local searching and entertainment searching, but we're really running the whole gamut. People who are interested in technology, people who are interested in business, they're using these phones much like they would their desktop computers to look for the same kinds of information, because the experience translates more to what they're used to on a desktop device.
Yeah, just to note, this is information that Google has provided us, and our reps from Google have provided us. So it's inside information, and basically that's what they're saying is people are using their smartphones very much like they're using their desktops and their PCs, as opposed to dumb phones.
So again, we've mentioned that we want to focus on high-end devices because those are, in Pointed's eyes, and largely in Google's eyes, the future of mobile advertising. These devices are getting faster and more accessible and more affordable as they go on. Consider the iPhone 2G, the Edge iPhone that came out in 2007, launched for $600 for an 8 GB storage unit, which is a pretty hefty price if you're going to jump in and make this your first smartphone. Nowadays, you can get an iPhone 3GS, or probably in the next few months, the iPhone 4G, for about $199, and it's a much cheaper data plan. So we're seeing these adoption rates on high-end devices continue to rise. People are abandoning feature phones. The other thing to point out here is that high-end devices, their audience tend to indicate a higher income bracket, which makes them in the short term very valuable for marketers. And as we see this grow, I mean, obviously the income brackets are going to drop a little bit. We're going to get a much larger range as these devices become more ubiquitous. But now, if you jump into a mobile AdWords advertising campaign, you're going to be grabbing a significantly valuable audience.
Yeah, it is interesting that at this time you can target the high-income demographics on the mobile phones. In the future, it might not be so easy. So it is definitely a reason to possibly jump into the waters right now. At a minimum, I think anybody who's doing search marketing should start testing the waters.
Absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about how you would do that. And at Pointed, our first love is pay-per-click advertising, especially through Google AdWords. And what's nice about the way Google handles mobile marketing right now is that a lot of the things that we already know from desktop pay-per-click advertising can be applied to mobile pay-per-click advertising. largely because people are searching on their phones. The first page that a lot of people go to when they open up their new iPhone is Google's mobile search page, which is largely like Google's bare bones desktop search page. People are using these phones just like their computers, and they often are spending their time searching. So when we're setting up search ads for mobile traffic, especially for high-end devices, the line of thinking we can use is largely the same. You want to direct user traffic to a specific website. You want to give them a landing page where they can easily do the action that you need them to do, whether that's purchase a product, fill out a lead form, anything like that. Google gives you a few different options for targeting on mobile that are different than what we see on desktop advertising. You can target by browser, for example. You can go after full HTML browsers on high-end devices, or you can tell Google that you want to use specially formatted WAP browsers for devices even as high-end as Windows Mobile or BlackBerry devices. Those last-gen devices still aren't using full HTML websites. So you can take your campaign and split it out for both if you really want to grab the largest amount of audience. But Google makes this very easy, and you can get very granular in the kind of tracking that you set up.
Right. So there's obviously there's a less development because you don't have to create a page for every type of phone when you're going after the smartphones. In fact, you don't even have to create a special page, but we do recommend that you make a page or a landing page that is simpler and easier to view within within one of these smartphone devices. The other option is just that you don't even have to have a landing page. I mean, you could do click to call, which is perfect for an iPhone if you have a call center.
Absolutely, yeah. We actually have some information about click to call coming up in a few moments, but that's one of the unique values of mobile marketing that we'll get into here. Something you can't necessarily do as easily on a desktop platform.
You can do it, but it's not as seamless.
It doesn't work as well, and we'll get into why here in just a few moments. First, let's talk about what we mentioned earlier. You might already be opted into a mobile campaign. Your ads might already be serving, especially to iPhones and Google Android devices. Google's done a great job of splitting out their targeting. You've got a lot of control over what you want to target, especially for Google search. You can tell it if you want to just go after desktop and laptop computers, if you want to go after high-end devices. A few weeks ago, I believe right after the iPad came out, Google's team added precision targeting for the iPad itself, which is, as we mentioned, a bit of a gray area. Is this going to be a mobile device? What kind of impact is this going to have on phones versus desktop computers? It's kind of there in the middle, just where Apple wants it. But you can create an iPad-specific campaign if you'd like as well. Google is rolling out all kinds of new targeting options, and it's very easy to go in and set these up. They're right under your settings tab, just like we're used to for other network selections in Google AdWords. The real takeaway from this is that when you're setting up a campaign, you want to make sure that you're following the best practices that we're used to for desktop campaigns. If you're going to target a specific area, high-end devices versus WAP devices versus iPads, split those out into different campaigns, just like you would with search and content. And so that gives you the largest amount of control over the message that you're delivering and how much you're going to spend on a daily basis. Another thing to think about is the landing page. And John was just talking about how high-end devices through Google AdWords can really send traffic to a full-featured web page. But sometimes it's not always the best way to go. We have 3 examples here of Fandango.com. And they've thought about how people are using mobile devices to access their services, because obviously if you're out on the go and you decide to see a movie, the easiest way to check those times is right there through your phone. So on the left, we're looking at a full HTML page for Fandango.com in an iPhone browser. This is really constrained. It's not incredibly usable. It's very image heavy. The text is very small. And devices like the iPhone and the Android will let you zoom in so you can make it usable. There's not a large barrier of entry, but as we know from traditional online advertising, you want to remove the barrier of entry as much as possible. So the middle option is the iPhone optimized landing page for Fandango.com. Much fewer, boy, that's a confusing way to to phrase the sentence. There aren't a lot of images on this page, and the text that you've got here is easily readable, but you're going to have to do a little bit of digging to find exactly what you're looking for. If I tapped on the losers, then it would pull up some information for what theaters that's playing at, showtimes, that sort of thing. So they've condensed what you're dealing with here, but it matches the user experience for a traditional iPhone page much closer than the full-featured HTML page does. And finally, and this is more of an advanced topic, but what we're looking at on the right is an iPhone native application for Fandango.com. And you can see that they've really built this out. It's using a lot of specially formatted images. It's condensing the text information as much as possible while still keeping it readable. And this is a great balance between the full-featured web page and the iPhone web page. Obviously, you have to go to the App Store to download it, and they could possibly charge for this later on. But it's another option that you can use when you're setting up your mobile advertising campaign.
I guess that's a natural question: is why don't they just use the same app format for their mobile landing page?
Well, part of it is because they can this iPhone optimized page. You want it to load as fast as possible, and a lot of the assets that will come up for an iPhone application are already stored in the app, so you don't have to download those over and over again through a 3G network or even on wireless. The other option is that this iPhone optimized page really views just fine on an Android device, so they want to make sure that it's lowest common denominator, that everybody can access that page easily. But for the full value, Fandango's push is to go and download their application. And for other companies, this might lead into an interesting monetization avenue. I mean, I'm thinking specifically of something like the New York Times, where they have a fantastic iPhone app, and they don't really have that much of an iPhone optimized page. At some point, they could start charging for that application. There's a new revenue stream that print desperately needs.
Desperately. Just look at the PI Times around here.
Absolutely. So we've talked about how to take your advertising campaign in AdWords and translate it a little bit to mobile, but mobile obviously gives you a few more options when you are reaching out to your audience. And because of the unique usage patterns in mobile, we often find that you're engaging users that are very close to the point of sale. You're catching them in a different part of the sales funnel than you would if they were sitting at their desk in their office trying to do as much work as possible while still looking for the information they need. Obviously, the big home run here is the fact that when people are searching on their mobile phone, they could be right in your neighborhood. They could be looking for local information. And so one of the big betas that Google has recently rolled out for specifically for mobile campaigns is local business ads. Many companies, especially clients of Pointed, already have a local business profile set up. Google's actually recently rebranded this as Google Places. And integrating your local business data into a pay-per-click ad is relatively easy. Once you have your profile built out, you can just hit a couple of checkmark boxes in AdWords and away you go. But this is especially valuable for mobile because a lot of the search trends that we see on mobile are people who are looking for directions or looking for something that's in the exact geographic area that they're standing in when they do their search. So this opens a couple of different options for you. If you're using local extensions for your mobile ads, people can easily get a hold of your address and use that information to set up a Google Maps listing for directions. And then they can come to your brick and mortar store and do the kind of business that you wouldn't be able to get if they were on your desktop computer. A couple other betas here that Google's already rolled out. Click to call, which again, John mentioned that you can use this on a desktop computer, but it's a no-brainer for mobile devices. If I can search for a company and immediately get their phone number, tap on the phone number and give them a call and set up an appointment or buy their services, that just makes the conversion process so much easier. Google has done a great job of setting up tracking for this too. Not only are they reporting on clicks, but you can track which keyword provided a phone call and how many of those phone calls you got through this advertising campaign. Another beta that Google recently rolled out for this is coupon extensions for ads. And this is, again, tied into Google Places and the local business ads. But it's not outside the realm of possibility to set up a campaign for mobile where people search for your specific services and immediately get a coupon that they can use when they buy. So it's another option to think about when you're setting up your AdWords mobile search campaign.
Yeah, it's kind of another reason why you would want to separate it out. So you might have a different strategy with mobile, and I think we got a case study about that later and how that plays out. But mobile, you can advertise to somebody in a location that is different potentially than what you're trying to do when people are, on phones and are, especially in, travel sites and different advertisers like that. It could be very handy. And of course, also retail sites.
Absolutely. The case study that you mentioned is this next slide here. Google gave us some information about Vegas.com and how they used both traditional online advertising campaigns and mobile campaigns to broaden their audience and reach their audience at every possible point of the sales funnel. They started off with a traditional AdWords campaign for desktop PCs where people would be planning out their vacation and doing both informative searches and booking their travel plans directly from their PC. So they focused on people who were looking for air and hotel packages, nightclub passes, show tickets, people who were really planning out their vacation. But what do you do when you're in Las Vegas and you're out on the Strip and you find yourself with a few moments of free time and you're not sure what to do? This is where Vegas also targeted people on mobile devices. They gave them specially formatted ad copy and landing pages in their search campaign to give their vacationers a broader sense of what they can do if they find themselves with a few moments. So you could book tickets directly from your phone for a show that you might have thought was already sold out. So instead of being in the planning stage, this is more of right at the tail end of the sales funnel where you're ready to buy. You're not doing as much research, you're just reacting exactly to what you're looking for. And this goes back to the idea of catching your users at a different point of sale than you would on a desktop computer.
Yeah, I don't like this. It makes us marketers have to think.
Yeah, we do have to think, but Google and other companies like Google are giving us more robust tools for planning for each and every one of these situations.
Yeah.
And that's important to keep in mind when you're putting together your mobile campaign, is that these aren't the kind of situations that we're used to in desktop advertising. So having this extra tool set is invaluable.
Yeah, it's also leads into kind of also landing pages and multiple levels where you try to reach people. With landing page, for instance, you might have a landing page that just has an email form in it, and then send them an email after they fill that out instead of a long form, and then have the end user kind of fill out the conversion on their PC. So it goes from the mobile to the PC. That's something we really haven't had to do before.
Yeah, it's the idea of multiple tiers to a conversion path. Really important when you're dealing with a device that may not be able to provide all the information that the advertiser needs for a lead form. So if you just collect their email address and reach out to them later on, and then you can start analyzing which step of the conversion process is more valuable, and it really just makes the entire campaign more robust. So we've spent a lot of time talking about search, but we're not just searching on our mobile devices. There's a whole entire internet out there that we can access from our iPhones. And I think what's really surprising is how Google's given us some tools for catching people reading that content. Let's take a moment and look at other usage patterns besides just search. And I think some of these are really gonna make some sense, and just anecdotally in the way that we use our devices nowadays. Let's start at the top. Right, 65% of people who are connected to their device are using the mobile internet while they're commuting to work. And I can speak from experience on this, working in Redmond for years, here from the Seattle area. I spent a lot of time on 520, and if I didn't have my cell phone connected to the internet so I could read all my favorite blogs and do all my Twitter posting, I probably would have gone crazy. 82% of mobile device usage is happening at work, not here at Point It. We would never do that here at Point It, John. I would never be browsing on my phone when I should be working, of course.
Yeah.
But
go on.
Thank you. 81% of people are using their mobile devices, and they're constantly connected when they're shopping. This is a tremendous statistic when you're thinking about e-commerce. If someone is standing in their local Walmart, Best Buy's a better example, and they're looking at prices, the first thing a lot of people are thinking of is that they can hop on their device and find comparative shopping information. They might be able to figure out if people have if an e-marketer or an e-retailer has a better price on something than the product that they're standing right in front of, and that's something to keep in mind. 95% of mobile internet usage is happening during other downtime, and I like to call this statistic the Starbucks line statistic, or possibly the movie theater when the trailers are boring and you're still waiting for your movie to start statistic, because this is definitely a significant amount of usage time here. And then 80% of people are constantly connected to their mobile device when they're at home, when they could be on their desktop computer, when they could be sitting in their office or den or have their laptop out in front of them. They're reading information on their phone instead of their computer, which is just really amazing when you think about it. It provides us with a great opportunity for advertising.
Mm-hmm.
So just like using the content network for desktop advertising campaigns through Google AdWords, we want to make sure that we're reaching out to the content network through mobile. And again, Google has made this very easy. All the best practices that we're used to on the content network for desktop campaigns are applicable here. You can target different websites, you can target different devices, you still want to keep in mind the kind of optimization you want to use for your landing pages, but you also want to change your ad formats. You want to engage the audience, much like you would on a desktop content campaign, but keep in mind that people are reacting differently when they see these advertisements on a mobile page than they would on a desktop page. And this is another great example of where image ads can really, really play very well on the content network. We've got two examples here on the slide of the kinds of image ads that you can use through a Google display campaign. The first one's pretty basic, right? Not a lot of creativity going on there. It's mostly just a background and some text. But as you can see with the Google ad, you can really tailor your creative to this mobile advertising platform and to the specific image constraints of a device. That second ad is one that I would certainly tap if I saw it in stream on my mobile device. Mobile display can be a great opportunity to really increase your brand awareness. It also does a great job, just like we see on the desktop advertising side, with driving ROI. You're catching people at a different point of the sales funnel, and you're catching their attention differently than if they were directly searching for your services. So it's something to keep in mind when you're setting up your advertising campaigns. And just like on the desktop, you're going to have the kind of transparency for what placements you're going after, what placements you can exclude, include. As we're going to get to here in a few slides, you even have the opportunity to weed out specific applications that you might be advertising on in Google. Excuse me. You know, another great place, and Google likes to make a big push for this on the desktop side, but it makes a little more sense in my mind on the mobile side, is advertising alongside YouTube videos. You'd be surprised at the kind of usage we see for YouTube videos on a mobile device. And the other thing to keep in mind is that when you're dealing with a smaller amount of screen real estate, that ad displayed, you know, across the way from a YouTube video really hits home a lot more. You'll see this a lot with traditional image ads as well, but consider that when you're viewing a video on your mobile phone, it takes up almost the entire screen, if not the entire screen. And that level of engagement makes a big difference for a YouTube ad on a mobile device compared to a desktop device where you can easily move away from the video that's playing. And again, Google will make a big sales pitch and tell you that these YouTube ads are really great for large advertisers. But it might also work for a smaller advertiser. You don't have to be a big brand like Mountain Dew to make YouTube ads work for you. Take a moment and consider what your advertising message is, and just like for normal content sites, consider what that message is going to look like alongside the rest of the content. YouTube is not a great fit for everyone, but it can be a great fit for you and your unique value proposition. Finally, and we saved this bit for last because it's both advanced and it's constantly in flux, but Google AdWords already provides a really robust set of applications for in-app advertising. Flycast, Shazam, ITV, Pocket Express, these are all largely downloaded applications on the iPhone, and they in-app in-app advertising for AdWords right now. As we're going to see in the coming months when the AdMob deal that Google has put together gets approved, that's only going to expand their network even larger. And and you're really going to have a lot more options for what kind of applications are going to fit with your marketing
I
message.
guess that's a bit of an assumption that it will be approved, but it looks like it.
I have very few doubts that it will be. I think it'll go through.
Well, there's definitely competition now with iAd as well, Apple's version of app advertising. I
Absolutely.
guess how is that different? How is that going to be different, do you think?
Well, Apple's an unknown quantity when it comes to the online advertising space, right? They're very good at promoting themselves, but how fair are they going to be to advertisers themselves? That's a gray area. But we do know that the focus of iAds is very much going to be on the creative side of things. So you're going to have something that's really interactive, that's largely in front of the user, as opposed to something that's supposed to fit in with the content that they're reading that we're used to on an AdWords campaign. So that's going to be the large difference between the two. As to whether Apple's approach is going to work better, I don't know. It's hard to say. I'm a large Apple fanboy, and I have my
I
doubts.
hadn't noticed that.
Well, you have an iPhone as well.
Yeah. Okay.
Consider for a moment what it's going to be like when you're in the middle of using an application or you're on a web page, and suddenly your full iPhone screen gets taken over by an ad.
I can't wait.
It sounds very much like pop-up ads on the desktop, doesn't
Intrusive.
it? It's
Yeah.
really scary for advertisers. But in the coming months, we're gonna see what Apple rolls out, and it will be really interesting to see how they can pull it off.
Okay. Well, I think we're coming to the conclusion of this webinar. Yes, we are. There's the question. So we actually have some questions that have come in, and I'll pass it by our mobile expert here, Corey. The first one's from David, and he asked, will my AdWords spend cover service sites and content aggregators or simply Google search?
That's a great question. I would say yes. For an initial test, you really probably are okay, unless you have an incredibly small budget, in which case you probably shouldn't be considering this. But the mobile advertising space, for as vast as we're seeing it, it's not going to deliver the same amount of impressions and clicks right now as a desktop campaign would. So you don't need as much of an initial advertising budget to jump in and start testing it out. I'd say start with a small budget, target everything out the way you need, and really see what kind of results you can get. It shouldn't dig into your your desktop search budget too much yet. You can really carve out a niche for it.
Mm-hmm. I guess that answers question number 2. How would you begin with a small test if you have don't have a mobile site yet? Actually, it kind of covers that, but.
Yeah, that's actually another big question that we get from a lot of people who are interested in mobile advertising. Do I need to go in and create a whole new landing page? Do I have to format it for every single device out there? Yes and no. If we're going with points focus on high-end devices, I would say use the traditional kinds of landing page optimization that we're used to, and really get your landing page to load quickly and be easy to work with on the desktop, and you'd probably be surprised at the kind of results you get from using that same landing page on the iPhone. Mm-hmm. Obviously, at some point, you want to optimize that page completely for the iPhone, or completely for the Android, or whatever device you're targeting. But you'd really be surprised at the kind of results you can get from a full-featured web page on a high-end device, because while it's not as perfect for that form factor, it's still largely usable.
Right, and I guess one of the features, of course, with Google Website Optimizer, I mean, you can really do an A/B test pretty easy just to test out that theory.
Absolutely.
Allison from Blue Marketing asked, how do you add local business profile into local mobile extensions?
This is really easy, actually. There's a checkmark box in the local business profile where you'll drop in the You'll say that you want to integrate this with your AdWords campaign, and you have to give them your campaign ID. But then you just go into AdWords and check for that specific campaign. I want to include local extension ads. It sounds really complicated when we talk about it in a webinar sense, but it's very easy to implement, and it's tremendously valuable.
Okay, great. We got a question from, I hope I got his name right, Hand from Rhapsody here in Seattle. If the advertiser has an iPhone app available, would it make more sense to send the user to an iPhone optimized site or to the app page in iTunes off of the banner? Sorry.
That's a tremendous question. what he's asking is, do you want to advertise your application on AdWords, or do you want to advertise your mobile site? And I would say you want to do both. Google makes this really easy, actually, when you're advertising an application. They have, just like keyword insert syntaxes for the headlines of an ad for when we're testing out things on the desktop side of things. You can use a special syntax for your display URL that will tell the ad that when people click on this ad and they tap it on their phone, they want to go directly to the download page for this application, either through the iTunes App Store or the Google Android app platform. And it's a really interesting way of driving people to your application, especially if you're going to monetize it. I would test out both, depending on what the application actually does or what your service is. I would test out both services. I would do 2 different campaigns and target them differently, and then compare the results.
Thanks, Corey. Well, we haven't stumped you yet. Let's see if we can stump the DJ here.
Let's see what you got.
Bob Davey asked, do you have any cost data for the cost to develop an app for iPhone or BlackBerry or Android? An app, sorry, not an And also the cost to adapt an iPhone app to Android or BlackBerry?
This might be the one that stumps me because I don't have specific cost data. I can tell you that it's a significant amount of resources to develop an application for either platform, really, the Android or the iPhone or even a BlackBerry. It does cost a lot. You're going to need some man hours. You're going to need to get the licensing set up so that you can do this. But it's a market that's growing, and there are a lot of companies that are already set up to take existing mobile landing pages and convert them into applications and add additional features to them. So it might be something that instead of developing in-house, you might be able to farm out. We've had some initial success with talking with some people who do this, and it really remains to be seen whether that's the best way to go or if you should hire in-house and do it there. But I would say that these devices are becoming more and more mainstream, and the applications themselves provide much better experiences than a normal mobile page would.
Okay, good answer, even though you didn't know the answer. That was great. I think we have one more question for can I have the envelope, please? We we see a giant amount of growth. I'll ask this question. We've seen a huge amount of growth. We're talking about all the statistics. Do you expect that at some point there's going to be a drop off, that it's just going to slow down, or do you believe the statistics?
I believe at some point we're going to hit a plateau point. I think we're not going to be experiencing the rapid growth that we see now, but that's a long ways off. I mean, we're really at the beginnings of, forgive the hyperbole theater here, but we're at the beginnings of a mobile revolution. The idea that you can do the kinds of computing that we normally had to do on a big giant device on something that's in the palm of your hand is really going to change the way that we think about the internet. And so it really should change also the way that we market to people on the internet as well. Right? Now's the time. This is the beginning of the real amount of opportunity. Because if we don't get started doing mobile advertising now, our competitors will, and we'll be left in the dust. So I wouldn't worry so much about a drop-off point as I would the idea of getting started and really thinking about how mobile can work for your specific advertising message and your company's offerings.
Okay, awesome. Thanks, Corey, and thanks, everybody, for joining us today for our monthly webinar. We'll be sending out emails on future webinars that you can look forward to. Make sure you take us off. Make sure you whitelist us, and because we have a lot of great topics to come in the future, and we are going to be drilling down in a couple of months, I believe, on more of the full mobile landscape. And instead of drilling directly down into Google, there's so many different players, as Corey mentioned earlier. So thank you all for attending. I want to wish you and have a great day, and we'll talk to you soon.